everybody, and thank you so much for the invite to your conference today. Happy Volunteers Week. This week always comes up on me really quickly every year, but it's such a fantastic week to enable us to be able to celebrate our volunteers. And like I said, I'm really excited to be here today. Volunteers Week not only is a great opportunity for us to thank and recognise volunteering, but it's a really special week for me personally as well, because a number of years ago, I started my very first formal volunteer management job on the 1st of June. And it's been a really significant date within my career ever since. And a couple of years ago, I also secured my first head of volunteering role, also starting on the 1st of June. So, like I said, it's a week that is very special anyway because of our volunteers, but also to me personally in terms of my career. Just to give you a little bit of introduction and background to me. So my first experience of volunteering was through my nanny, and she was one of these incredibly committed British Red Cross shop volunteers. She volunteered for years in her local shop, and I saw firsthand through her the incredible experience that volunteering had on her life, from giving her life a meaning and a purpose through retirement, through the great friends and connections that she made through her volunteering. My first personal experience of volunteering was I spent every weekend, pretty much of the winter months, supporting my parents to run their ice hockey team in Solihull. At the time, I never thought of myself as being a volunteer, but again, that's a really great example of the informal volunteering that keeps our sporting world going. And then more formally, I've spent probably the last 10 to 12 years in more formal volunteer management roles. So I started off working for West Midlands Police alongside special constables, and then moved where I've spent the largest part of my career, which has been within the hospice sector. And then just over a year ago, I joined a charity called Sense. And that's where I want to start, really. So Sense is a national disability charity who supports people who are deaf-blind and those with complex disabilities to communicate and to experience the world. I'm going to start by playing you a short video just so that you get the chance to experience what Sense is about. Me quite emotional when I watch that video back. It doesn't matter how many times I've seen it, but when I was watching it again yesterday to prepare for today, what struck me more than anything was how everything we do at Sense is based on touch. That's how one of the main methods that we communicate with the people that we support, and I'm sure that you noticed that today as well whilst watching the video. So what that has meant that in response to this pandemic, we've had to really quickly adapt our ways of working and consider how we involve volunteers. So pre-COVID-19, all of our volunteer roles were face-to-face, whether that was volunteering in one of our charity shops, being a volunteer on a Sense holiday, going ice skating with a buddy, or cheering at a London marathon. Everything that we did was face-to-face. So in recent weeks, we have begun to adapt and to consider how volunteers can continue to support and add incredible value to our organisation and the people we support at Sense. At this point in time, our volunteering looks different to ever before. So some of our volunteers are carrying out their volunteer roles virtually, whilst others are having to take a break from their volunteering as they are required to shield, or their current roles aren't available because our shops or our centres are closed. So in recent months, my focus has been around engaging our current volunteers, ensuring that they feel valued, of which Volunteers Week has been huge. Considering how we can support our volunteers to return to their roles when government guidelines change and our volunteers feel ready to return. So the situation that we find ourselves in now has presented me both with opportunities and challenges around how I lead volunteering activity across Sense. So we've had challenges around data and the impact that this had on us being able to effectively communicate with our volunteers. We have limited volunteer roles available to enable volunteers to be able to support our organisation during this time, as everything has been done face-to-face. Departments across Sense who involve volunteers work very much in silos, and this has been really challenging to ensure a consistent and a good volunteer experience. And finally, there is that huge uncertainty about the health and well-being of our volunteers and whether or not they decide to return to their roles with us in the future. I'm sure these challenges aren't unique to Sense, and these are things that you will all be experiencing yourselves. But that said, there are also a number of opportunities for volunteering that we're exploring. It's really exciting to think about the new roles and ways in which volunteers can get involved in supporting us differently in the future. Now feels like a really good time for us to be able to review our processes and remove some of those barriers to volunteering, helping to make our volunteering offer far more accessible. We have a huge opportunity to break down some of those silos across our organisation and get everybody working together, helping us to provide a better, more consistent experience for our volunteers. There are definitely some opportunities for something good to come out of this challenging situation, and I'm really excited to explore what volunteering looks like in the new world of the new normal for us at Sense. I just want to say at this point, I think it's really important to recognise that we are all trying to lead volunteering in incredibly challenging times. This pandemic is affecting every area of our lives. And I think it's important to remember that whilst we all have a job to do, we also need to be kind to ourselves during this time as human beings. You know, this is a really exceptional circumstance at the moment. You know, we're all learning to live and work differently, and there is so much change going on in our lives. I know from my personal perspective that over the last couple of months, there's been times where I've been really confident in my ability to lead our volunteering through this phase, and other times where it has just been a real struggle, and that changes on a regular basis. That said though, there are some things that I have found really useful and have helped me to adapt my approach to leadership over the last few months. And those are some of the things that I wanted to share and talk through with you today. So the first one is around strategy, vision and values. I launched our volunteering strategy back in December before all of this happened. There was a huge impetus behind volunteering. We're making some real progress, and then everything came to pretty much a grinding halt. However, in our volunteering strategy, we were really clear about our vision for volunteering, and I share that with you now. So our vision for Sense Volunteering is to have a flexible, diverse volunteering offer, providing a quality volunteer experience that values the skills and talents that people have to offer, and matches interests to connect people, creating meaningful relationships that support those with complex disabilities to participate, feel included and connected to the wider community. For me, reviewing this vision now, despite the different world we are living in, it's exactly the same as what it was before this pandemic. And I found having a vision for our volunteering hugely useful in recent weeks, as it has really helped me to unite my colleagues across the organisation and bring people together towards our common goal for volunteering. We also have 5 organisational values across Sense that underpin all of our ways of working. And I have to say that in recent months, I've seen these values demonstrated more than ever before across our organisation. I personally have found these values really useful as guiding principles in the way that I've gone about carrying out my work in recent weeks. So that's something that might be worth you thinking about revisiting within your own organisation. So reprioritising and adapting your plan. So our volunteering strategy is really clear on the work that we need to carry out in relation to our volunteer engagement. The essence of what we need to do for volunteering does remain the same. However, how we are going to do it and the steps we're going to take are very different to what they were back in December. So reviewing and reprioritising these plans and sharing what that new plan looks like with the wider organisation, I have found hugely valuable in helping to raise the visibility of volunteering and in building trust amongst my colleagues. And there's something for me about how I connect with my colleagues differently at this time. I'm not sure about you. I don't know if this is a trait of a volunteer manager, but I love being around people and building relationships with those around me is hugely important to me. So that's both personally, but also to enable me to influence colleagues so that I can be more effective in my role. I don't have a volunteering team around me, so I largely rely on my colleagues in the office for bouncing ideas off and for peer support. And I found not having those people around in recent months really challenging. I have to be honest, and I'm still finding my way around figuring out what works for me in terms of influencing people working virtually as opposed to face-to-face. I mean, sadly, for now, the days of the chat over the water cooler or popping to have lunch with someone just aren't possible. So I've been trying to find different ways to interact with colleagues during this time and continue to build connections. One of the things I found really helpful has been to organise virtual coffee breaks with colleagues, and that has been hugely supportive to me throughout this time. These haven't necessarily been conversations about work, but they're the more general, how are you conversations that you tend to have with your colleagues around you that I find I'm really missing at the moment. I can't stress this enough, but looking after your own health and well-being at this time really helps to support your resilience as a leader. I'm sure many of you have seen the little picture that I've put up on the screen, but just please remember to take care of yourself because you can't pour from an empty cup. Collaboration. I've always been really clear at Sense that I can't carry out my role the support of others throughout our organisation. So in the last few weeks, I've brought together our volunteering steering group, which is a group of stakeholders across the organisation who work with and involve volunteers. And that has really enabled us to collaborate on all areas of volunteering. I mentioned at the beginning that we are a national charity, and there are often barriers to people meeting up to work together, especially in relation to geography, travel, and cost. So this has now been totally turned on its head, and I have seen some great areas of collaboration in recent months. We have volunteers moving from one part of the organisation to support with another part. This is something that never would have happened before this pandemic. There is work that we are carrying out at the moment that would normally take us months and months to do. is now being carried out in weeks. Decisions are being made much quicker, and we're becoming much more of an agile organisation. Collaborating more effectively with colleagues has enabled us to be able to respond to this pandemic. I've been thinking really hard about where I focus my time and my energy. There are so many things at the moment that are just out of our control. I've tried really, really hard to focus my time and energy on the things that I can influence and control, rather than the things that I can't. Again, coming to this realisation and making a better use of my time has really helped to increase my effectiveness as a leader, and also my own personal resilience. So celebration, and I know that is exactly what we are here to do today, and it is in direct correlation with Volunteers Week. But please celebrate your fabulous volunteers and also your incredible colleagues who work alongside those volunteers. Share their stories and celebrate their achievements. Thank them for all that they do for your organisation, and let them know why you value them. I know that this week we have all been sharing case studies and stories about our incredible volunteers and what they do. I don't think this should just be confined to Volunteers Week, and this is something that we should really continue to do. This has helped me to raise the profile of volunteering across our organisation, and also to inspire my colleagues about the power of volunteering. So earlier, I mentioned that in response to the coronavirus, we have adapted some of our volunteering activity. So to finish, I just want to share with you what that looks like in practice. So we have a buddying programme whereby individuals are matched with each other based on their skills and interests. Usually all of these activities are carried out face to face, but our volunteers have been incredible in finding new ways to adapt to work with the people that we support. And these matches are continuing to happen virtually. So I'd like to introduce you today to Daniel and Beth. They have been buddies since November. They have gone out for food together, they've been cycling together, to name but a few activities. They both share a love for roller coasters and theme park rides, and went to Winter Wonderland together and had an absolute blast. They had planned a trip together to Thorpe Park, which coronavirus has sadly put on hold. But this is a short video of Daniel and Beth catching up with each other virtually and planning their future trip to Thorpe Park.
Hi, Frida and Katie and everyone at Sense. This is Daniel and Beth. We're just having a Zoom call, and we wanted to say hi and hope you're all okay. We're looking forward to doing some group sessions really soon. Daniel, do you want to say hi to everybody?
Hi.
And Daniel said that this week's gone very quick, didn't you, Daniel?
Yeah.
And we've been talking about how much we're looking forward to going to Thorpe Park, aren't we, Daniel?
Yeah.
And what's Thorpe Park going to be? Is it going to be awesome?
Yeah.
It's going to be awesome. We're super excited to go on the rides, and we hope we can see you all soon. So wave bye, Daniel. Say bye.
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 So I just wanted to finish on that really. It's an example for me of our incredible volunteers and how they have shown resilience and to adapt. They all have so much going on in their own life, but they've really taken the chance to carry on with their volunteering and think about how they can continue to support their Sense buddies. I've been hugely inspired to see this work that has continued, and it's been fabulous to have the opportunity really to share it all with you this morning. So thank you for the invite today, and I'm very happy to take any questions. I'll stop sharing my screen now, Matt.
Thank you for that, Charlotte. That was absolutely amazing. And I'm just looking at the comments on Twitter from people, which you'll be able to do in a minute. And it was a really kind of inspirational, thought-provoking and touching presentation that I think we can all learn a lot from. So thank you ever so much for that. Will, I think we've got a couple of questions coming in, haven't we? Do you want to take us through those?
Yeah, I think the first question I've got here is from Kay Thompson Barker. I don't know if you wanted to ask a question yourself.
Hi, good morning.
Hi.
Hi there. Thanks very much for that, Charlotte. That was really, really insightful and some really practical tips, which is so helpful. Thank you. As I was listening to you, I was really just reflecting upon the such significant change upon society right now in terms of, you know, so many people being furloughed, so many people being uncertain about how they might return to work and what that might mean for them. And of course, everybody's in different situations, but it's a time where, you know, impact on mental health can be really detrimental. And so volunteering, as we know, gives people a really practical opportunity to do something meaningful, to make good use of their time and to have a sense of self-worth and value. So I suppose I'm wondering what we can do during this period in the short term, and of course it means working with great agility, but what can we do to provide more volunteering opportunities to people in those situations and therefore really give even more back to society through volunteering?
Yeah, I mean, like I said in my presentation, it's been a real challenge for us. So literally all of our volunteering activity was done face-to-face before this. So one of the things that I have spent time doing is speaking to colleagues across the organisation who work and involve volunteers to find out and map out what those opportunities are for doing things more virtually. So again, collaborating with people, having those conversations, understanding how volunteers can be involved differently has been really, really beneficial. It's the kind of thing that sometimes until you ask the question of people, you don't really know what's possible. This kind of interaction via Zoom, like Matt said at the beginning, we all sit here thinking, why on earth have we never done this before? So I think it's just speaking to people about what the possibilities are. And, you know, being a bit brave and just trying things. Like I mentioned, things have really accelerated for us. We're quite a slow organisation in making things happen, but we set up our virtual buddies project in a matter of weeks. So it does show you what can be done. I think there's also, it's really worth looking across the wider sector as well. There's some really good ways in which people have adapted volunteering. So looking outside your organisation as well is something that I've found hugely useful in helping us to identify how we can respond now.
Thanks very much, Charlotte. Thank you.
And
good luck with it.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you, Charlotte. That was great. We've just got a couple of minutes left before we move on to the next section. And I don't think we've got any questions, but a couple of things popped into my mind there when you were talking. And one was around, you know, organisational barriers to volunteer participation. And I'm sure, you know, as we all think about it and perhaps the length of time that it takes us to recruit and onboard volunteers and the barriers that creates, I just wondered what you and Sense are doing as an organisation to address those in a way that kind of removes those barriers and makes it easier for people to get involved.
So this is something that we are starting to work through at the moment. It's a challenge for us because, like I said, all of the parts of our organisation work in silos, and that means that we have very different processes across the organisation, which since I joined have been quite difficult to break down. However, now is kind of the perfect opportunity to throw that rule book out the window, to be slightly less risk averse than we have been in the past. We're also working on a volunteer database at the moment, which is providing us with a really good opportunity to look at our processes. it's work again that had started before the pandemic, but we've now got some more resource to support with that project, and the work is being hugely accelerated. So having a system to enable us to tie down our process is going to be hugely useful. But again, looking at all of the different areas across Sense and how they recruit volunteers differently, there's a real opportunity for us to standardise that. So that's what we're going to be doing moving forward.
Brilliant, thank you, Charlotte. And we've just had one question, so we'll just take this one from Esther. Esther, I wonder if you wanted to unmute yourself and ask Charlotte your question.
Hi, Charlotte. Thank you very much for your presentation.
Hi, Esther.
So my question was, actually, we've gone doing some buddying online as well, and one of the challenges we had was around some of our service users don't have digital access. Have you been able to work through that in any way?
As yet, that isn't something that we have experienced. We have been working with people who are already known to Sense and looking at how we can support them. However, it is something that we are aware may become a barrier to us in the future. And what we've done in response to that really is we've been working with our corporate fundraising colleagues to look at putting in bids for money from trusts or funds around purchasing some digital technology really and some hardware to enable us to look at how we can support people in the future. So it's not something that we have at this point in time, Esther, come up as a barrier with. I'm sure it's something we will experience. But like I said, one of the things we are looking at is how we can fundraise to be able to provide that equipment for people who may need it.
Thank you.
Brilliant, thank you, Charlotte. And I don't think we've got any more questions coming in. So that just leaves me really just to say thank you for, again, a really amazing and inspirational presentation. Now that you've finished answering all our questions, have a quick look through the chat, because there's so many kind words and thoughts directed your way. I wouldn't want you to miss them. So thank you ever so much. We'll all give you a virtual clap.
Pleasure, thank you.
Brilliant.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you. Happy Volunteers Week, everybody.